Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the owner of Harmonious Renewal. I'm coming to you today from the park where I have my new microphone on, so I'm hoping the sound is a little better this week. Let me know what you think. I want to talk a little bit more about how your health is connected with everyone else's health around you. This is part 3 of the series. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, I'll put the links below, either on my blog or on YouTube, depending on where you're seeing this. I want to focus a little bit more today on how your health is connected with the health of people around you. Some of this will probably seem obvious. So when you're super stressed, it causes stress in your family, it causes stress in your workplace. When people you're close to are stressed, it raises your stress, so obviously there's interconnections there. We all know about passing illnesses among people, and why you're supposed to stay home if you're sick because it can affect others. This can happen on a level of trauma. People who are traumatized can actually induce trauma in people around them. It's becoming more, there's more awareness being raised around this. It's called secondary trauma. You know when things are going on in your family even if you don't talk about it explicitly, maybe parents are having trouble or trying to work on some issues or stressed out about financial things. It affects the kids. You can see it in them. You can see behaviors change. At work, you can tell. I used to work in a school, and you could always tell right before Christmas those stress levels started to rise. The kids reacted to it. They got more wild. The teachers reacted to it. We all got more discouraged and tired. And so we affect each other in so many ways, and that's happening on an emotional level, a mental level, an energetic level, that we connect with each other, and our health influences the health, mental, physical, emotional health of people around us, and theirs affects our health. So this is stuff that we've talked about for a long time. You probably know this. It's not unusual. A couple things I want to talk about to add on to this that maybe you don't know about. There's been an interesting discussion going on that I've seen in different resources I'm reading with this idea of where do you begin and the next person ends, both energetically and physically. So for instance, I was reading this interesting book, this woman who loves nature, and she was talking about how flowers actually give off scent in terms of molecules. So it's a physical substance. That molecule is drifting through the air, you're taking it into your body and smelling it, and then that molecule becomes part of you. So at which point does that molecule stop being part of the plant and start being part of you? And this may sound kind of esoteric and sort of a ridiculous question, but I think it's valid, because especially when you're talking about sickness and mental health and emotional health, where does that problem that is yours start to become a problem that is theirs, and who has responsibility for what piece of that? And I think that's why this whole discussion around the interconnectedness of health is so fascinating to me, because I try and teach people that you have to be aware and not in control, but working on your own stuff, because you don't necessarily want your stuff to become someone else's stuff. That's part of your responsibility. But in the same way, their stuff shouldn't be your stuff. You don't need to claim responsibility for that. If they're trying to put that responsibility on you, it's not yours. Even if they're not, you could make suggestions for them, whoever that other person is, to get healthier because they're affecting you. So I think there's some really interesting discussion to be had there about where does your problem end and their problem begin? Where does your emotional health end and theirs begin? Where does their physical health end and yours begins? That's been an interesting discussion with COVID. You know, is it are your freedoms being limited because you're being asked to care for somebody else by wearing a mask? I think there's a really fascinating discussion to be had there. Another thing I see on an energetic level that very few people are aware of, I wasn't until I started doing energy work, was that on an energetic level, emotions and physical symptoms can be shared, particularly among people, among families and people who spend a lot of time together, because on an energy level, that vibration is being shared, so somebody else in the family can pick it up. So I see this particularly if I'm working energetically with one person in a family, and they're releasing a whole bunch of old emotional energy from something that happened 5 years ago. Often they'll call me, that client will call me within a week or two and say, I'm seeing some really weird stuff happening with my kids. Do you have any idea what's going on? And I'll say, oh, well, if they were holding on to the same energy you were, you releasing that energy has given them permission to release theirs. So it's super fascinating. I've actually been in homes where I'm working with one person, and as soon as that person clears it, I feel another person in the family start to clear the same energy. So it's really cool, but we're completely unaware of it, and we really have no control of that in some ways. We share energy, we share emotions, we share these things all the time. But that awareness piece of knowing that what you're feeling, what you're dealing with on an energetic level does affect the people around you. And sometimes if you're feeling something and you can't figure out where it's coming from, it could be coming from somebody else because they are affecting you as well. So it's just this layer of health that a lot of people are completely unaware of. And I think we need to start understanding it so we can begin to break down some of the reasons why we're having health problems or why people around us are having health problems that's bouncing off of ours. You know, all these interconnections going on. So there's this ripple effect that I talk about, and I've talked about this before on my blog, when you start to heal, and the only person you can really have control over is you. So you can heal yourself, and you can't start pointing your finger and telling other people they have to do work because it's affecting you. But you start healing yourself, and it starts having these ripple effects on the people around you, at work, at home, relationships you have with friends and family, all that kind of stuff. In the same way as that ripple comes out, if other people then start working on their own stuff, that can ripple back to you, and that can help your healing process too. So it's really important to, once you get to a certain point in your healing journey, realize that these connections are there and start thinking about how you can work with them to push yourself into more healing and possibly help your friends and family at the same time. So some other things that I just wanted to mention quickly is that where I think you can really start to hack this without trying to control people or tell them what to do is realize that there's a lot of research behind this idea that you are an average of the people you hang out with. So even financially, if you look at your salary, there's research supporting your salary is usually the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. If you took their salaries and add them together and find the average, yours would be pretty close to that. What you do, what you think about, what you spend your time on, how much you exercise. If you looked at the people around you spend the most time with, you're probably falling in with them in kind of a middle ground, okay? What this means is if you are trying to heal something, if you are, for instance, trying to start a better exercise program and you hang around with a lot of people who want to go out to eat Friday night and go to a movie and then go out for drinks afterward, and then you wake up every Saturday morning going, I don't feel like going to exercise. So the people around you are affecting your health in a very not linear way. They're not telling you not to go exercise. They might be telling you to do it. But the choices that you are collectively making is affecting your personal decisions to try and get some exercise. So start thinking about that. If you're stuck in any way in your health journey, in your wellness journey, and you can't figure out what's holding you back, start looking at the people around you and saying, am I hanging out with people for whom this is a priority or for whom this is not a priority and they are subtly influencing me not to meet my goals? So that's a really subtle hack that might be hard to do on your own. It could be something that you could get a friend to talk to and start looking at that and asking some really good questions about how are these people I hang out with affecting me. Doesn't mean you need to stop seeing them as friends, but maybe you need to start making adjustments or finding some people who are closer to where you want to be, because you're going to end up falling into the average, so somewhere between them. So if none of your friends have ever run a step in your life and you want to run a marathon, then you need to start getting a couple friends who have run marathons, because then that's going to help push you toward that goal. So super fascinating, these subtle ways in which other people influence us and we influence other people. One more thing I want to mention, because I did do a blog post on this, and it's just endlessly fascinating to me, this concept of woundology. And it comes from Carolyn Myss, and the word is wound, like you have a wound, and ology. So the idea she talks about is that sometimes, always, it feels really good to name what your wound is, right? So you're trying to heal from something, or you're trying to deal with a trauma, or you're trying to deal with a hurt, and you finally come across a name for what it is. That feels fabulous. And then you find people who also are dealing with that wound, and you start to talk to them, and you start to talk about their healing journey, and you hear their experiences, and it validates everything you've experienced. And that's a really, really good thing. What Carolyn Myss calls woundology, though, is getting stuck in that identity. So if you spend all your time then, you get so attached to this identity of this wound, and you spend so much time with these other people who are in this wound, and you're not collectively pushing each other to actually heal from it, you can get stuck in that place where all you are doing is reopening this wound, re-evaluating this wound, talking about it all the time, and you're never actually moving on to the healing part. So that's another really fascinating thing that I had never heard about until I read her work. And I thought, nobody wants to get stuck in the wound, but sometimes it feels really good to be in a community who understands what you've been through. And then again, that collective idea of they affect you and you affect them. If you're all kind of enjoying this feeling of being in this wounded community, there's no real impetus for you to move out of that. So that's something to think about too. In your healing journey, are you being stuck somewhere in your wound and unable to move out because you hang around with so many people who also don't want to move away from that? So that was a whole lot of information in as fast as I can put it out there, and this is still a little longer than I had hoped, but I hope that gives you some things to think about. I hope that gives you some ideas of how your health affects the people around you and their health affects yours. I'll be moving on to some other topics in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Pinterest, you can find me on my website, which is Harmonious Renewal, and Harmonious Renewal on Facebook and Pinterest as well. And I'd love to connect with you if you want to talk some more about these ideas. Have a great day. Bye.